out that there is a yellow replacement item for attachment A only on this item. So with that, staff has completed revisions to the Proposition 1B local bridge seismic retrofit account guidelines. The revisions to the guidelines incorporate feedback from stakeholders at a workshop conducted on June 19, 2019, and recommendations from members of the Highway Bridge Program Advisory Committee. These revisions are intended to promote project delivery of the 43 projects that are currently in design to the construction phase. Significant proposed changes to the guidelines include the establishment of project delivery agreements with agencies for projects that have not advanced to the construction phase by December 31st, 2019, increased oversight and accountability through enhanced quarterly reporting to the Commission and the Committee, and restrictions from seeking new obligations in the Highway Bridge Program for projects outside of the program for agencies who fail to meet a milestone as scheduled in an executed project delivery agreement or do not comply with additional requirements of the revised guidelines. Staff intends to present these guidelines for adoption at the October 9th, 2019 Commission meeting. Do you have any questions, Commissioners?
Do we have any questions? I guess my question is, when are we going to stop having items from the 2006 1B program still on our list? It seems way too long, so that's
Hopefully we're going to
superficial question.
answer that question for you over the next couple of years as we move these projects forward.
Perfect. Okay, that was information item. We'll go to item 22, please. Chris.
Yes, Commissioners, item number 22 is a Commission action item. Government code requires that the Commission submit revisions to the Proposition 1B local bridge seismic retrofit account guidelines to the required legislative committees 30 days prior to adopting revisions to the guidelines. As we noted before, staff intends to present the revised guidelines for adoption at the October 9th, 2019 meeting, and therefore must submit revisions to the guidelines by September 6, 2019. Staff recommends Commission approval of this item.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavallone, a second by Commissioner Gometti. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstaining? That motion carries. Item 23, Alika.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 23 is a pink. This is an action item to adopt the fiscal year 2019-20 Local Streets and Roads Subsequent Report of Eligible Cities and direct staff to transmit the report to the State Controller as indicated in Attachment B. At the June 2019 meeting, the Commission deemed 527 of the 539 cities and counties eligible to receive fiscal year 2019-20 program funding with its adoption of the initial report of eligibility. At that time, 12 cities were pending eligibility and therefore not included in the initial report of eligibility adopted and transmitted to the State Controller on June 27, 2019. Commission staff work with each of these cities in an attempt to collect the outstanding complete project list and resolution submittals by the August 1 deadline. The subsequent eligibility report reflected in Attachment B, the pink in front of you, now indicates that each of the 12 cities pending eligibility have met all the necessary eligibility requirements prior to today's action. As of August 13th, 2019, we received the executed project list and resolution submittal from the City of La Habra Heights, therefore no longer considering their eligibility status as contingent. With the Commission's adoption of this subsequent report, 100% of the possible jurisdictions will have obtained fiscal year program funding eligibility for the first time in the program's 3-year history. Approximately $1.1 billion in fiscal year 2019-20 program funds will be dispersed monthly to those eligible cities and counties, with the first disbursement scheduled to take place this September. Of the 539 jurisdictions deemed eligible to receive fiscal year 2019-20 program funding, a total of 2,164 projects were proposed, where 622 of those projects were identified as relisted project priorities. Next for the Local Streets and Roads Program is the fiscal year 2018-19 expenditure reports. These will be due by October 1st, 2019 to the Commission using the CalSmart reporting system, which will open no later than August 26, 2019 for this reporting period. To prepare and assist jurisdictions with this reporting effort, staff will be conducting a technical training on August 22, 2019. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the previously scheduled August 13th training was postponed and rescheduled. All previously registered jurisdictions were successfully transferred to the August 22nd date, with the overall jurisdiction registration increasing by 2% and less than 1% being unable to attend. As of August 14th, 2019, jurisdictions, roughly 86%, have registered for the August 22nd, 2019 technical training. Since the fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure report technical training held, the number of jurisdictions that are registered has increased by 28%. In previous expenditure reporting cycles, staff held additional trainings during these reporting processes and will continue to do so this fiscal year 2018-19 expenditure reporting period. Staff recommends the adoption of the fiscal year 2019-20 Local Streets and Roads subsequent report of eligible cities and directs staff to transmit the report to the State Controller as indicated in Attachment B.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Thank you.
Here we go.
We're snoozing, yeah. Okay, any discussion? I would just say congratulations on the 100%. So thanks for your hard work and all our partners so that we can not have a list of folks having an asterisk by their name. So good work. So any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstaining? That motion carries. We'll now move to item 24. Paul.
Commissioners, tab 24 is an informational item. The San Mateo County Express Lanes Joint Powers Authority has submitted to the Commission an application for approval of tolling on the US 101 in San Mateo County. Sandy Wong from the Express Lanes JPA will provide a presentation on the project. And following her informational presentation, the next item, tab 25, will be an action item with Commission staff findings and recommendations.
Good afternoon, Chair Inman, Commissioners, Director Branson, Secretary Kim, and Director Francoya. My name is Sandy Wong. I'm the Executive Director of City County Association of Government, CCAG, but today I'm wearing the hat as the Executive Council member for the San Mateo County Express Lane Joint Powers Authority. So if you would indulge me, there are many folks who come to this meeting with me today. I would like to at least recognize them. First is our Express Lane Joint Powers Authority Vice Chair, who's San Mateo County Board of Supervisor Don Horsley. And also April Chan from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, who is representing her boss today as a member of the Executive Council on the Express Lane Joint Powers Authority. And also our key staff person, Jean Higaki. And most importantly, the two project managers who's been working on this project for many years to make it happen. That is Nadal Tuquan from Caltrans, and also Leo Scott, who is one of our consultants. Okay, so as Paul mentioned, the San Mateo County Express Lanes Joint Powers Authority has submitted an application to your commission for your consideration to approve an express lane authority in San Mateo County for the US 101 project. And just to explain the complexity of this project, on this slide, I will explain about the agencies that are involved in developing the capital project. And on the next slide, I'll talk about the agencies who will be operating the express lane. To get the acronyms out of the way, CCAG stands for City County Association of Governments, and that is the Congestion Management Agency for San Mateo County. TA is the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. They manage and administer the transportation sales tax in San Mateo County. So these are the two county-wide transportation agencies in San Mateo County, and they have joined forces to develop this Express Lane project. To integrate the project is design and construction smoothly with the regional and the statewide agency. We form an integrated project team with representatives from CCAG, the TA, Caltrans, and BAFA, the Bay Area Infrastructure Financing Authority. In my mind, they're synonymous to MTC. So we form an integrated project team with in-house staff along with consultants to develop the capital portion of the project. And Caltrans is the lead agency for the environmental phase as well as the construction phase of the civil aspect of the capital project. And BAFA will be the lead agency for the toll system side of things. So this page would explain about when the capital project portion is over, then the operating of the express lane. So at the top you see SMCTA, the TA, and CCAG, the two agencies, while they are the sponsors for the capital projects, because the express lane is new to San Mateo County, so they decided to form a dedicated agency in the future to operate and manage the express lane. So they have recently formed a new joint powers authority between these two agencies, and the new agency is called San Mateo County Express Lanes Joint Powers Authority. And that board of directors will have representatives from both the TA and CCAG. And that body consists of 6 elected officials. They will be delegated with the responsibility to adopt future toll ordinance and toll policies and any equity policies. They will be responsible to develop expenditure plans for toll revenues. And also they will be responsible to comply with all other requirements as stated in the Streets and Highways Code, Section 149.7. And because BAFA has already been operating express lanes in other parts of the Bay Area, it just makes sense to work with BAFA in the day-to-day operation to ensure consistency of the operating aspect of the express lane so that the users, the driving public, will get a consistent look and feel of the express lane as they drive around the Bay Area. So the Express Lane Joint Powers Authority will be entering into an agreement with BAFA to operate the express lanes in the future. Why are we doing this project? Maybe I don't need to convince anybody. Traffic is bad. And on this segment of the US 101, for the most part, there is no managed lanes, so there is no benefit for folks to carpool or buses. They don't get any incentives because they get stuck in traffic just as everyone else. So the project's purpose and need stated here in 6 points. Number 1 is to encourage carpool and transit usage and to improve travel time reliability for those who use the carpooling and express lane. And overall, it will increase person throughput in the corridor. It will apply technology to help manage traffic, and it will reduce congestion overall in the corridor. And also, we've listened to our local stakeholders, and we want to make sure one of the requests is that we don't degrade the general purpose lane by creating the express lane. Here's a map showing the corridor segment. As you could tell, from the southern end, there's the shorter blue section. It denotes the section that currently has a carpool lane. And then the longer red section above is, there is no carpooling existing. So the project will add a fifth through lane in the red section will be dedicated as express lane. And the blue section, we will convert the existing carpool lane into express lane. And then when it's done, it will be a continuous express lane, approximately 22 miles. It will be joined to the segment to the south in Santa Clara County. Our neighbor in the south, they are actually slightly just a hair ahead of us in constructing and building their express lane. So when it's all open, it will be a long, continuous express lane corridor. Just a quick overview of the feature, actually, I already talked about. So this express lane is, again, by converting carpool lane in the south and also to add new lane to the north. And because the corridor is situated within a well-established urban area, so on both sides of the freeway, it's already quite mature with developments. And in order for the project to add the express lane and yet not to take any private property to build the project, so the project team has gone through very careful balancing act to achieve that, and one of which includes changing the lane width for lanes number 2 and 3 in the widening section from your standard 12-foot freeway lane to 11-foot. So, so reduction of 1 foot on the lane width in the widening section. So there are currently 4 through lanes on the freeway. We're adding the 5th lane on the far left for express lane, and we are keeping that as 12 foot. And the what they call lane number 2 and number 3 are the 2 lanes that we're reducing it by 1 foot, and then the other outside right-hand lanes are being maintained at the 12-foot section. And that require Caltrans design exception approval. To get to that decision, the project has followed the Caltrans adopted procedures regarding any non-standard design features. The design team and the Caltrans geometrician, that is the approving authority at Caltrans for any non-standard design, they have reviewed all the factors that go into it. They have considered the existing condition of the freeway as well as safety issues, including any accident data along the corridor, past practice of the state, and any environmental impact and right-of-way impact. So with all things considered, they have granted the design exception, and with the condition of adding some additional safety lightings on the freeway, on the corridor, and also to provide CHP enforcement locations where, as part of the project. This project is being delivered in 3 contracts. The southern segment, where the carpool lane is being converted to express lane, is actually currently under construction. And then the northern section, that is the lane widening portion, will go to construction in the spring of next year. From the toll system standpoint, we are again working with BEFA for the design and installation of the toll system, and the overall project is slated for opening in late 2022. We are also considering, but the final decision has not been made yet, is to have an early opening for the segment to time it with the Santa Clara County segment. If it's proven beneficial to the drivers to have an early opening, that is being considered currently. The project, our application stated how we will comply, and we have met all the requirements in the Streets and Highways Code Section 149.7, and also in your staff report, your staff has done an excellent job in describing all those details, so maybe I don't need to waste your time in reading this slide. The next slide shows, just graphically, there are a lot of graphics that were generated as part of the traffic analysis for the project. These are just a few extract pictures that shows that the project will decrease the overall vehicle hours of delay comparing the bill and no bill condition, and it will also improve or increase the person throughput in comparison to the no bill option. The project will also, in terms of VMT, vehicle miles traveled, for the entire corridor, there is really no significant difference comparing the bill and no bill. As you may suspect, generally when you improve the operation of the freeway, you tend to have some sort of increase in travel through that particular corridor, but it's being compensated from, because the traffic has been drawn from other roadway to this corridor. So from, if you draw a bigger box of the project location, then your overall VMT is very much constant. And also this project will have a small decrease in vehicle hours of travel overall. I think this is my last slide. This slide just depicts what the public process the project has gone through. It has gone through numerous public hearings, and we received many public comments. There's been stakeholder meetings, and so on and so forth. And by the way, I wanted to mention, I really appreciate the commission, the commissioners, and Director Branson and staff Paul coming to San Mateo County on July 25th to hold the public hearing for this application, to receive public comments, and we really appreciate that you spend the time with us. And finally, I wanted to restate that this project really has a strong partnership and collaboration among many agencies locally in the San Mateo County, also in the region, and Caltrans. So to recognize their collaboration, and it's really good to work with Caltrans, MTC, and CTC staff, and they have been very helpful. And I also wanted to mention that District 4 Director Tony Torres is here today, along with his staff, to signal their support of the project, as well as MTC Executive Director Teresa McMillan and her staff are here to lend their support for the project. With that, I will conclude my presentation.
Questions?
Just one
Yes.
quick question. Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there a possibility that the JPA for this project might, in the future, if everything were right, be looking at other projects, or is this a JPA for just this project?
This JPA, there is a good possibility they will look at operating other express lanes if there will be more express lanes in San Mateo County.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, Secretary Kim.
Sandy, thank you very much. If LA Metro's experience with its Express Lanes project is any indication, you will be successful. About a dozen years ago, I was on Metro's staff. Supervisor Burke was on Metro's board at the time when this project was being contemplated. We had to overcome considerable public opposition. But despite that, we got a bill through the legislature, championed by then State Senator Mark Ridley Thomas, now supervisor, and he too encountered a lot of opposition in Sacramento. But despite that, got the bill through, and the project in LA on the 10 and 110 freeways has exceeded anybody's expectations. It is now wildly successful, and my prediction is you will have the same success.
Thank you. And in fact, we really aspired, we were inspired by LA Metro. We took a trip last year to visit LA Metro staff as well as elected officials, and we were really impressed.
Can I ask a question following up on that, being a regular consumer of the hot lane in LA? I believe that we have seen a reduction in the vehicle hours traveled. It seems like we're touting success around everybody's moving better, so our hours of travel would be reduced a bit. And you're saying that we aren't going to incur any more vehicle miles traveled because you're going to adjust for some of the arterials. But it seems to me to do this, we'd have an improvement in terms of the hours that the public's traveling.
Yeah, maybe. So what I was trying to say is this chart. No, the left-hand chart, the green and the gray are approximately showing the same. That it depicts the overall VMT. So if you want to have more detail on the 101 corridor, maybe I'll have to turn to the project manager if you want that level of detail.
Well, I just know that I'm looking at the right-hand chart and thinking that one of the reasons we do this is because we have better overall throughput, because we're managing at least one of the lanes by a pricing mechanism. So I don't know, in Metro, I don't know, Bob Naylor or Patricia Chin, anybody here from Metro, to tell us, I mean, I think we have had some improvements of not so many hours.
So is your question why we're not showing more reduction in vehicle
Yes.
hours traveled?
Yes,
So the
yes.
green is almost as high as the gray, but just down by a hair.
Well, it
That is your
seems like a
question.
lot of effort if we aren't going to improve the overall.
I
Project manager.
The
Dan. I
project
think we
manager
should-
might know the numbers inside and out.
want to see if there is a volunteer on the
There are
team
people
who
there.
Well,
may
Patricia might have it.
better
No.
data.
We got some experts here. They can
Okay,
come down.
good.
So let me go to the other chart, or the other chart. Oh, I can do it. Great. This one. So let me start with the person throughput to answer your question,
Okay.
Chairman. So as a result of converting the lane, as we talked a little bit about in the hearing, we're incentivizing people to get out of cars, single occupant vehicles, into buses and carpools.
Okay.
What we're increasing throughout the corridor is person throughput, partly by doing that, but also when we add a lane, we do add capacity to the roadway. So we will draw vehicles into the corridor, which increases our vehicle miles traveled in the corridor simply by having the extra lane.
Well, but that's not what the chart,
Right.
Go
So,
back to
so
your
the,
other-
so this person throughput chart gives you the indication of the increased number of people we get through the corridor as a result of the project. And then this one gives you the vehicle hours traveled, tied to the vehicle miles traveled as well, that we're still seeing a fairly significant utilization of the corridor. We still have congestion in the corridor and the general purpose lanes. That's what causes the vehicle hours to stay high. But what we're not seeing is an increase in those vehicle hours traveled by virtue of creating the lane.
well, but that
Which
would be
we
your
would-
no-build alternative, would be the
Right, but that's, yeah,
increase.
so the no-build alternative there is slightly higher. It's not, the difference
With
here
my
on the
glasses.
chart is not significant, but it's slightly higher. And so if we were not to create the lane, we would not see the increase in people throughput, but we would see an increase in the congestion in the corridor. That would be the bump, the slight bump in the vehicle hours traveled in this chart here.
Yeah, well, I see the arterials, but then when you were on the previous page, you talked about increasing
Right, what
vehicle
these
miles,
charts
so
don't
I'm just
show,
confused.
and there's an added benefit in the entire peninsula corridor, which is we're drawing congested traffic off of the city streets. These charts don't reflect that. But that was one of the things that the cities in particular were concerned about, was that we actually improve the condition on the freeway and not degrade the condition in the roads on the street, on the city streets. We are actually seeing in the model an improvement to the city streets because we're drawing those trips back onto the main line, while at the same time getting a better travel time for the carpools and the buses, and seeing an increase in the person throughput.
Well, as a believer and a customer, I just find your charts to be confusing, so, whatever. Okay.
Sorry about that. We can talk about it separately.
Maybe let me add one thing. Maybe the key word is inducing traffic. When we open the new lane, that's encourage people who use different corridor to come, at least initially, to come to the corridor. So that's increased the person you put, that's increased also the vehicle hours, VMT. So by inducing the new traffic, that's the result of this study.
Well, but we can have this conversation offline, but the chart on the left and the right conflict, in my opinion, so, okay. But I have good experience from being a consumer. Okay. That was information. I have one speaker, Lisa Klein, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Commission. I'm Lisa Klein. I'm the Director of Field Operations and Asset Management at MTC. And I'm here to express MTC's strong support for the project and the application. And MTC wears at least 3 hats in this project. We are the regional MPO. We are a funding partner in the project. And as Sandy mentioned, we are also one of the region's express lane operators, and we will be providing the toll system and providing operations for the project. You know, the 101 corridor is, of course, very important regionally by virtue of it connecting the 2 important economic centers in the Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And this particular project is a really important link in the planned express lane network in the region, for which this commission has enabled to a large degree. With the approval of this application, we would have authorized in the Bay Area about 600 miles of express lanes in total. And this is a very key piece of that. We hope will eventually extend north to San Francisco. A couple of factors that have been important in the project and that Sandy acknowledged and are part of the application. The first factor is so important to use the express lanes in partnership with other complementary management strategies to really move more people through the corridor and to operate the freeways as efficiently as possible. And the second factor is the commitment of the Joint Powers Authority to really work cooperatively with the other operators in the region so that we do provide a customer-focused system that is easy for our customers to navigate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 25, please. Paul?
Commissioners, tab 25 is an action item requesting approval of the San Mateo County Express Lane JPA's application for a tolling project that you just heard about. AB 194, which delegated the authority to the Commission to approve tolling, contains 6 minimum statutory criteria. Staff find that the application meets these 6 criteria. Staff also evaluated additional information provided by the applicant pursuant to the Commission's guidelines. And the staff report documents how the application meets each of the criteria. I'll provide just a couple of examples. The project has a complete funding plan. All of the funds have been committed or allocated to the project. The project, as it's on the state highway system, has the support and cooperation of Caltrans, which is another requirement. And the project will improve performance in the corridor, such as by increasing passenger throughput. In addition, the application indicates that the project has been designed in coordination with the express lanes being developed to the south in Santa Clara County, And it states that the JPA will work with other Bay Area toll operators toward regionally consistent policies that allow for seamless travel. This commitment towards seamless travel is included in the resolution to approve the project. With that, staff recommends you approve the item.
Move approval.
Oh my goodness, I think I heard a little chorus here. So Commissioner Gardino, we have a motion and a second by Commissioner Gardino. Is there discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. I looked
know
at
that-
you. I looked at
Fran, I
Gilman.
know that all of us Italians look alike to you, but
Okay, let me roll back. We'll do take two. I have a motion by Commissioner Gardino. I have a second by Commissioner Gilmetti. Is there discussion other than the amens? Are we good? No? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstaining. That motion carries. Thank you. Item 26. Garth. safe
Commissioners, tab
vehicle.
26 is an information item. Tanisha Taylor from CalCog will be providing an update on the safe vehicles rule, which will have a negative impact on project delivery if the rule is finalized by the federal government. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tanisha.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. The SAFE rule continues to be cause for great concern amongst our members in the regions and the MPOs. A lot of moving pieces, so I'm going to run through them pretty quickly. Stop me if I'm going too quickly. A lot of squirrels in the forest that look like they might save us, but don't, and I'll talk about a lot of those things as we move forward. Energy innovation, a policy think tank, estimates implementation of the SAFE rule would cost the U.S. economy $400 billion through 2050 and result in an increase of 10% in transportation emissions. This number does not include cost associated with California's transportation sectors, so the impact to our projects is not included in that $400 billion number. That is purely the cost of the emissions reductions of the rollback itself and not the cost of the impact to the transportation system. You may have seen, as I've already mentioned, several headline news stories about the continued battle between the state of California and the Trump administration regarding the proposed SAFE rules rollback of Obama-era fuel efficiency standards. I'll touch on what each of those headlines means to transportation in a minute. But first and most importantly, the rule continues to move toward finalization. It is not stopping. On August 2nd, the final rule was transmitted to the Office of Management and Budget for review. This is one of the last steps in the federal rulemaking process. It was also on Saturday, August 3rd, submitted to the White House for review. EPA Administrator Wheeler indicates the final rule may be released as early as this Labor Day. So now let's talk about those headlines. Last month, I reported 17 automakers sent a letter to Governor Newsom and President Trump urging both parties to return to the negotiating table to find middle ground. Within 24 hours, the Trump administration rejected that request. No surprise, since then, the Trump administration has not returned to the negotiating table with the state of California. In July, 4 of the 17 automakers, Ford, BMW, Volkswagen, and Honda, struck a voluntary emissions deal with California on a framework for annual GHG emissions reductions. The agreement delivers the same GHG reductions in 5 years as the original Obama-era CAFE standards would have achieved in 4. Although this is a great emissions reduction deal for the state of California on climate change and in the climate change battle, it does not resolve or mitigate the transportation impacts we continue to be concerned with. Why? The Trump administration is not a party to the agreement and continues work towards finalizing the rule, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. If finalized without a minimum 3-year grace period for transportation, the rule, even with acknowledgement of the agreement between the 4 automakers in California, continues to invalidate CARB's emissions model impact, which is at the root of the transportation issues that we've talked about. Second, odds are slim that language contained in the House Appropriations Bill defunding implementation of the rule will survive in the Senate Appropriations process. In early July, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, along with the Associated General Contractors, National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, met with Senate Appropriations Committee staff to discuss the prospects of that language remaining in the bill. Senate staff acknowledged the SAFE rule was an administration priority and very political, but the prospects of the House language surviving as is are slim. 3rd. Last month, I reported that EPA Air Chief Wareham resigned. He's the architect of the safe rule. This month, as of this week, NHTSA's Deputy Administrator King has left her post as well. Her nomination was narrowly approved along party lines twice by the Senate Commerce Committee, but has never been taken up on the Senate floor. Democrats opposing her confirmation have cited concerns that she hasn't been aggressive enough on safety regulation and fuel economy standards. Safety regulations are one of the arguments that the safe rule is not safe. As a refresher, the rule is jointly proposed by NHTSA and EPA, so the two heads of those agencies have resigned. However, as I reported last month, I anticipate Ms. King's departure will have no impact on the administration's schedule to finalize the proposed rule. Lastly, and the last squirrel in the forest, there are many, EPA has approved a new emissions model. Normally, I don't talk about the technical details. They've approved IMPACT 2017, but it is one that appears on the surface to resolve the issue. Unfortunately, the model does not reflect the safe rule. The model was developed recognizing the Obama-era standards that exist today, and EPA has approved that model. So if the safe rule is finalized, the model, even though there's a 2-year grace period for use of the model, will not be valid. It will be invalidated by the safe rule as well, because it will not reflect the updated CAFE standards that the Trump administration is proposing. So in terms of next steps, we're going to continue to work with the California Congressional Delegation, as well as Transportation California, business and industry. We're going to continue coordination with the state. In particular, once the rule is finalized, we'll work with CARB to deliver an update, to see if they can deliver an update sooner than the 2 years that they've promised. Not certain if that can happen, but it doesn't hurt to ask if we can move faster, as that's the remedy should the safe rule be finalized outside of litigation. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Well, do we want to shoot the messenger or no? Commissioner
Yeah,
Dunn?
just a quick question. This all ends up in the court system, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Gometti.
Tanisha, where are we with the rest of the car companies, GM, Chrysler? Is the state trying to sit down and negotiate with them also?
The state is trying to negotiate with all of the automakers, so that of the 17, 14, or 13 are outstanding outside of the 4. The state is actively trying to pursue those, and in Governor Newsom's announcement about the 4 automakers, he indicated that the desire was to continue to work with the other automakers to strengthen that coalition.
Yeah, because we have the largest car market in the world, and I don't think they want to miss that market, do they?
They do not. I think there's a lot of issues on both sides, unfortunately.
Commissioner Burke?
The automakers, many of them are not interested in changing their design, and they're moving forward. They want to maintain what they have spent in terms of environmental engineering, and it's going to cost them if they don't stay on schedule with what they have planning to do.
Well, I look at the world with the glass half full. However, on this one, it makes me very, very nervous that this won't move. And so I think for all of us, we really have to think about what does this transition, and I know at the last workshop, you helped us understand that there are more questions than answers in that, and also with the litigation, what would that mean for all of us? So for all of us who have worked so hard to improve our state of good repair and to get these SB1 funds working, I think we have to really plan on getting together quickly and seeing what we can have the least amount of hurt, I think, so, with that. So, Tanisha, we do appreciate all your hard work, and I know that you weren't thinking that this was going to occupy 100% of your time, but thank you. And
thank you.
And your organization for really taking the leadership role in this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate you as well.
Any more questions, anything? Nope. Okay. So let's move on to item 27, please. Garth?
Yes, Commissioners, this as well as an information item. We have Brent Green, the Caltrans District Director from District 9 up in Bishop. Will be down here to talk about the recent earthquake in his district, and we just wanted to say staff appreciates him driving all the way from Bishop to come on down here. So,
That's
There you
okay. It
go.
only took 7 hours this morning, so I'm in good shape. That actually is serious. You talk about shooting the messenger. If you're going to shoot me, you can just shake me, because I'm here to talk about the earthquake. So I couldn't help myself on that joke. Anyway, thank you for inviting me today to share the department's response to the Ridgecrest earthquakes. I know the way it was presented, maybe in your agenda, was our infrastructure, damage to our infrastructure. Quite frankly, the damage to the infrastructure wasn't the real story. It was in a remote location. There was relatively minimal damage to the infrastructure, but how we responded to that event and how we could respond to a similar event or larger event, I think, is the real story and the lesson learned for us. This slide just simply shows, and I think some of you will recognize some of these slides. You've been in this forum many times, listening to different types of response Caltrans has made to fires, floods, a variety of things. You haven't been in this forum necessarily in terms of how Caltrans has responded to earthquakes, and now's your opportunity to do that. This particular slide just shows the large yellow circle. The middle of that shows the epicenter of the 7.1 earthquake. There has been published, people are looking at the two main earthquakes. There's actually three, I think, that we were looking at relatively closely. All three were in the Mojave Desert region, near the Naval Air Station, China Lake, which is just kind of northeast of Ridgecrest. Ridgecrest is a community of about 28,000 people. It's located 122 miles north of Los Angeles. So for all those relatives you had back east that were calling you wondering whether LA was crashing into the ocean, that's not true. It's actually 122 miles north of there. The second quake occurred on Friday the 5th at 8:19. It was a 7.1 magnitude earthquake, and it created additional damage, primarily on our State Route 178. Of note, because I think most of us try to compare this to the Northridge earthquake, the Northridge earthquake that happened in 1994, this particular quake, the 7.1 we had, was 3.5 times more energy than the Northridge earthquake. Whew. And by the evening of July 5th, there were more than 1,400 earthquakes in this area. By the 31st of July, there were over 10,000 aftershocks. So you can just tell by this chart the intensity of the activity in that region.
On a day that the country was celebrating its independence, one of its states suffered its largest earthquake in decades with a 6.4 magnitude. The shaking in California shook homes and humans alike. The epicenter was the city of Ridgecrest, with fewer than 30,000 people in its population, located about 150 miles north of Los Angeles.
Immediately, I was receiving a series of telephone calls, emails, and texts from both headquarters and field office staff apprising me of the situation.
Only 3 days on the job, and Caltrans acting director Bob Franzoia was faced with a major emergency.
Even though it's been some time since there's been a major earthquake in California, I sensed that there was very little rust in the organization.
Our maintenance crews were absolutely amazing with the first earthquake. They were out there responding even though their homes had been affected.
Less than 48 hours later, an even more intense 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck.
And all of a sudden we started rolling. And so I got up and went out to the living room where I had a lot of company for the weekend. And they were, yes, we're having another earthquake. So I knew that one was strong.
Caltrans employees went to work. Engineers evaluated bridges and highway structures in the area. Crews were dealing with rock slides and large cracks across Highway 178. In nearby Trona, crews were faced with repairs.
Somebody had called in and said that the road had split open, so I was already making phone calls to the crew.
A 30-mile section of State Route 178 was shut down between Ridgecrest and Trona.
Within an hour, we were out here in force.
And the maintenance crews are just amazing. Yeah, they're really committed to helping the people of this state.
Crews worked through the night making temporary repairs, but more permanent repairs would be necessary. Caltrans acting director Bob Franzoia signed an emergency order allocating $3.1 million to that end. Meanwhile, nearly 400 miles away, strategic emergency management was underway. The priority, keeping the public safe and informed.
There was a group in operations, emergency operations here in Sacramento, who were in immediate contact with became 3 districts. As information came in, that information was being relayed to the Office of Emergency Services. There was constant communication.
And the company strike teams that were deployed into Ridgecrest.
I was immediately aware that I was surrounded by the best bunch of people, just experienced as can be, dedicated, and were helping me and supporting me continue Caltrans' work.
I'm Elisa Becerra with the Caltrans News Flash.
Thanks, Bob, for doing my presentation. That was great. Good job. It's interesting, you know, we've sat in this forum, and I myself have been a director for many years, and I've been with Caltrans for many years, and many of you have sat up here for many years, and you've seen and heard the response Caltrans has made to a variety of things. But now that it happened in my district, I thought, well, what does that mean? So I spent a lot of time interviewing the boots on the ground staff, and one interesting story was I talked to the superintendent who you saw there in the film, and it was July 4th when the first earthquake hit, and you know, he was out having fun with his wife, and he got the call, and he's starting back toward Ridgecrest, and he said when he was in his truck heading back toward Ridgecrest, he was like the only car going toward Ridgecrest, and all he could see is just a huge line of traffic coming out. And I think that's kind of what we do. I mean, we go in the situation wherever it is, you know, any time of day or night. In terms of time, I also found this fascinating that after the event occurred, 12 minutes later we were notified. 33 minutes later we were on site. Within 3.5 hours, we had already completed all the emergency repairs and got the road open. That's amazing. So I was actually out of cell range during this event. By the time I was in cell range, the event had occurred, we had responded, we repaired the road, and it was open in 3.5 hours. When the second event occurred, on the 7.1 event on the 5th of July, very similar. It happened late in the evening. Our crews responded. We were a little bit later this time. It took us 14 minutes rather than 12, but we got there. Repairs went all night, all the way till 5:30. The road was open. 2 hours later, just 2 hours later, a director's order was issued for the permanent repair. District 8 out of San Bernardino administered that contract with the approval of the director within 5 days. So in just less than a week to be able to respond to 2 major earthquakes with full opening, I think that is a real testament to what Caltrans has done in this instance and what we've done in all the events that you've seen throughout the years. So I had never dived into it that deeply, but you know, I'm proud of the team for what they did in that particular event. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. The reason I put this slide up there is that in an emergency event such as an earthquake, transportation is just one of the many state agencies that take a lead role in a particular activity. And CalSTA, of course, takes the role in transportation. So the bullets on the left just kind of show the organization that's involved in the leadership of the emergency response. And I think your next speaker is going to speak a little bit more to how that works. On the right is just kind of a thumbnail of all the various Caltrans personnel and different roles that they played in this event, all the way from Sacramento and what Bob had mentioned through all the districts. I mean, it's a very comprehensive response to how we do this. And I think that the comment that was made that, you know, there's not much rust in there. We have a process. We followed it. Cal OES was a great manager and leader of this event. And we certainly appreciate all the state agencies that supported, you know, us in this endeavor. Questions?
Yes, Secretary Kim.
Brent, huge kudos to you and your team. This was the first week on the job for both Bob and me, as everybody knows, and we were thrown into a situation, and true to form, Caltrans rose to the occasion, and as you pointed out, the emergency repair was done within a matter of hours, and the permanent repair was completed in less than 48 hours. And so this was noted, in the governor's cabinet meeting, which took place on the Monday following the earthquake. And on that weekend, the governor personally asked me a lot of questions about the condition of State Route 178, and we were able to answer them with some great intelligence from Bob and his team. And so, again, kudos and great job by both District 9 and District 8 in a very urgent situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? So thank you, and we appreciate that. So now we're going to move to item 28. Garth?
Yes. Commissioners, we didn't know that we were going to have the earthquake in July, but because staff had asked OES to come and make a presentation on something that they're working on. So we have Ryan Arba, who's with the Seismic Hazards Branch at the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We'll brief the commissioners on a system that will provide a brief notification prior to a seismic event. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
All right. Thank you, Garth, and thank you, Commission, for the opportunity to present today. So again, Ryan Arba, I'm the branch chief of the Seismic Hazards Program at Cal OES, and we've been working for several years now on this earthquake early warning system, and we're actually very, very close. This year we have plans to be able to send the alert to people, so I want to talk to you about that aspect of it today, as well as some opportunities for the transportation sector and to integrate this public safety capability into your operations. So first off, what is earthquake early warning? So it's not a prediction. The earthquake's already started. That first wave of energy, our sensors in the ground are able to detect it, produce an algorithm, and then it estimates the ground shaking at a particular location prior to the shaking arriving at that location. And the goal is, within that time gap there, to generate and send an alert to people or either to a machine in order to generate an automated action which can serve as an earthquake mitigation measure. So, as I mentioned earlier, the state's been working on this since 2013 and even going further back, working with the different scientists to be able to understand this. But going back to 2013, there was a bill directing Cal OES to take the lead on this for the state. In 2016, had another bill that established a governance which the California State Transportation Agency serves on. Certainly, we've had some participation, I know, in the regional offices with Caltrans as well, being part of what we call a beta test group where they can see the display in the transportation management centers. If I got that right? Good. Okay. So we've had this program now. We have the governance. And also a lot of state investments. So 3 rounds of state general fund, the majority of that going toward purchasing the seismic instruments, which are able to detect the earthquake and generate that alert. But also most recently in Governor Newsom's budget this year, we included $7 million for education and outreach to help educate the public on what to do when they receive the alert, which is drop, cover, and hold on. Same thing we teach you today when you feel shaking. The goal is that you would be able to get that alert and do the drop, cover, and hold on. Or for people driving to pull over to the side of the road prior to the shaking even arriving. Again, but we'll talk about that a little bit further, about some use cases about what earthquake early warning can actually do. So back in 2016, we worked with the Seismic Safety Commission to conduct a small survey of different sectors, including those in the transportation sector. What really stood out to us was the commitment and the concept, at least as a first step, to use this as a worker safety measure. So there are different ways. We've heard anecdotes where maybe workers might be up on a ladder or up in at a tower, and they could get the alert and potentially get down to the ground level to reduce the damage from shaking. They can drop, cover, and hold on. There's uses where an elevator can stop at the nearest floor. A recent study by the U.S. Geological Survey looked at a Hayward scenario earthquake, and if it were to occur in the afternoon when people are at work, they estimated up to 6,000 people could be stuck in an elevator. So this is an option, again, for that workforce safety to be able to stop that elevator. Just one of many ways that it can be used in automated actions. Of course, Bay Area Rapid Transit has been a leader on this. So several years ago, they again began as a beta tester. They have it so that the alert comes into their operations center, and it begins to slow trains by 2 miles an hour for every second of warning they get. So had the Napa earthquake occurred during the day instead of overnight at approximately 3 or 4 in the morning, BART trains could have slowed by 12 miles an hour. And it's continuing to operate today, to my knowledge, and that's again, one standout area. But of course, when I go around giving these types of presentations, we often hear, when is it going to come to my phone? And that's one thing that we're going to focus on for this fall. So there are two main ways to deliver the alert to your phone. The first is through a cell phone application and downloading that app. And the second one is through wireless emergency alerts, which already exists on your phone today. And we have two options to pursue. So the first is we're working with University of California in Berkeley. They have this app known as the MyShake App, where we're adapting that application in order to send these alerts, which we're calling Shake Alerts. So there's two parts to this contract that we're working on with Berkeley. The first is they're actually taking the accelerometer in your phone. So if you've ever held your phone vertically to read something and then turned it horizontally for one reason or another, that's an accelerometer. And that's the same thing that's in our earthquake seismic instruments. So the goal is to produce some research to see if we could crowdsource phones in order to either expedite the time that we can generate the alert or make the alert just provide another way of recognizing that an earthquake's begun and we need to start the process for an earthquake early warning. And the second, of course, is to use that app. So again, encouraging people to download and become part of a citizen science group as part of that, but also then be able to send the alerts through them. In very small testing, we found that the cell phone app is very fast at moving these alerts. Seconds matter in this case. So what we'll be doing is expanding the testing group over this fall, and we'd like to work, within the transportation sector and with everyone to see if you'd like to be part of that test group before we go live later in November. So the second part is wireless emergency alerts. This already exists on your phone today. It's, in fact, you would have received Amber alerts, severe weather warnings through this. We worked with the communication industry 4 or 5 years ago, and they said it'd be way too slow for earthquake early warning. The system wasn't designed to be able to turn around these alerts in milliseconds or seconds. But we'd heard there had been some upgrades, in particular moving from 3G technology to 4G, 4G LTE, and then eventually 5G, that in fact they would be able to turn around these alerts faster. So we conducted 2 tests this year. The first one was in Oakland. We're actually grateful Caltrans District 4 hosted us.
Careful.
Caltrans District 4 hosted us, and we were able to do that test. It was downtown Oakland. We focused on a workforce or daytime population of about 40,000. And then secondly, in June, about a week before the Ridgecrest earthquakes hit, we conducted a countywide test in San Diego. So both those tests taught us that about a third of the population received these alerts within the first 10 seconds, another third, so up to 2/3, receive it within a minute, and finally a third of the population report to us that they don't receive the alerts. So while wireless emergency alerts is a great option because it's already on our phones and it's a pathway that we can use to deliver the alert today, we think it's best if we mix that by encouraging people to download a cell phone app. And we should, by using those two parts, be able to reach the maximum amount of people with the public alerts. So again, one way we come to you asking for your help. The first is if your agencies that you represent are at all interested in being part of the test group. In fact, if you'd been sitting next to me throughout the meeting this afternoon, we had 2 aftershocks from the Ridgecrest earthquake. One was at a magnitude 3.5, another one was closer to a magnitude 4. The app, when you have it downloaded and you're part of this testing group, you receive all shake alerts that happen in the 3-state system, California, Oregon, and Washington. And that helps us just determine, number one, are the alerts being delivered to people? How fast are they being delivered? And if there are any bugs, so we can work out those kinks before we do the public rollout later this fall. And then the second part, of course, we need your help amplifying the messaging. These alerts, especially when we're delivering them to people, are meaningless unless people take the right protective actions. So we'll be coming out with the state funding that we've received through our state agencies and with all of our stakeholders, coming out with an education campaign this fall linked to the public rollout, where we'll be helping educate people on that message. And then finally, BART, again, being a pioneer in this space and using it to slow their trains. If there's any other use cases in the transportation sector that you can think of, we'd like to be able to work with you. We can work with the U.S. Geological Survey as well as Cal Berkeley and California Institute of Technology to integrate the live data feed into your operations to perform an automated action, which can help reduce your earthquake risk. And with that, available for questions.
We have any questions? Okay, we'll all download our app, so I'm sure we're all very interested in participating, so thank you very much. We appreciate it. And Garth, way to look ahead to know that this was going to be very relevant, so that's great. Okay, we're going to go to a little different order now, just because we're not going to have all of our commissioners tomorrow. So I would like to move to item 39, the consent calendar, if we might. Everybody okay skipping to 39? Jose?
Actually, Chris.
Was it Chris?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
not, yeah. That would be me.
Sorry, mine has
No, that's
Jose.
okay. So Commissioners,
okay.
there are 10 agenda items number 39 through 48 that are on the consent calendar. Please note there are changes to item number 44 on your changes to the agenda list. With these notice changes, Commission staff recommends the Commission approve items number 39 through 48 on the consent calendar.
A motion and a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, Susan, you'd like to go back to number 32, please? We're going to move to item 32.
Okay, Commissioners, the next 7 agenda items number 32 through 38 are informational items deemed by staff not to raise any question. Please note there are changes to items number 33 and item number 36 as outlined on your changes to the agenda list. And for item number 33, we need to read into the record that project number 2 also began expenditures prior to July 31st, 2019. And for item number 36, we need to note that attachment 2, project 1, began expenditures prior to July 31st, 2019 as well. And so with that, the individual items on the informational calendar will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner.
Are there any specific requests? If not, that was an information item. So with that, we can go back and do a little bit more work. So we'll do item 29, please.
Sure. Commissioners, tab 29 is an informational item. Marlon Flournoy, the recently appointed chief of the Caltrans Division of Transportation Planning, is here to provide an update on the California Freight Mobility Plan, or CFMP. The CFMP is required by both federal regulations and state statute. Per requirements, the plan should be completed by this December.
Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for having me today. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the California Freight Mobility Plan. I'm the chief of the Division of Transportation Planning. I'm here at Caltrans. Been in a position for about 2 weeks. But just a little bit of background about myself. I've been with Caltrans for about 17 years. Prior to this position, I was the District 3 Deputy District Director for Planning Local Assistance. And then prior to that, I was the Deputy Secretary for Transportation Planning at California State Transportation Agency. All right, so today this presentation is going to be a follow-up to the January 2019 presentation that we did for the CFMP. In today's presentation, I'm going to briefly touch on 3 areas: the goals and vision, the freight investment strategies, and the schedule. So the CFMP provides a vision of the freight in California, and it also provides a framework for influencing our freight decisions. The vision focuses on having innovative and economically competitive multimodal freight network. It also emphasizes considering social and environmental impacts as we make investment decisions. The vision and goals were created in collaboration with the California Freight Advisory Committee. And there are 6 goals: making strategic investments that maintain and modernize the multimodal freight transportation system, growing economic competitiveness in the California's freight sector, supporting strategies that avoid, reduce, or mitigate adverse environmental and community impacts, reducing freight-related injuries and deaths, and improving system resiliency, maintaining and preserving infrastructure, and lastly, providing transportation choices and improving system connectivity for all modes of freight. Now, I want to briefly talk a little bit about the differences between our 2019 freight plan and a 2014 plan. So one of the differences is that we work with the MPOs and Caltrans districts to develop freight investment strategies that provide greater focus on the uniqueness of the California regions. And I'll talk a little bit about this in my next slide. There's also greater emphasis on sustainability. So many of the actions that are in this plan come from the California Sustainable Freight Action Plan. And lastly, the 2014 plan relied on tiers, which focus on areas with the heaviest volumes, freight volumes. And so instead, this plan is a bit more strategic. It looks at investment strategies that are driven by plan goals, regional and statewide context, and closing gaps in the system. Tiers may be misleading because areas with the highest freight volumes may not necessarily be where the needs are. Now, I think one of the cornerstones of this freight plan will be our freight investment strategy. And to help set the framework, we worked with the California Freight Advisory Committee. We established a subcommittee on investment. And we looked at establishing various criteria to help us decide what the project list will look like. We talked about delivery timeframe, so projects that can be delivered by 2025, meeting the freight definition that was identified in the 2014 plan, aligning the freight projects with the freight transportation system, making sure that projects are in an improved regional transportation plan. So these are just a few of the criteria that we had talked about. So when we did our call for projects, we received over 1,200 projects across the state. And as you can imagine, it's very difficult to try to make sense of how to deal with 1,400 projects. Excuse me, 1,200 projects. So there's no easy way to set priorities. And the list didn't necessarily speak to the uniqueness of each of the regions. So we wanted to be a bit more strategic. So we work with the MPOs and Caltrans districts to develop regional freight investment strategies, which will be consistent with the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. So there are 7 corridors that we identified, and they include the San Francisco Bay Area, the Central Coast, the Central Valley, LA Inland Empire, San Diego Imperial County border, Central Sierra, and Northern California. The investment strategies have 3 components: baseline information, including important freight assets, local policies and plans, and a more focused short-term list of projects that contribute to the visions of each of the regions. It's important that we tell the story about freight from a regional perspective that truly speak to the unique needs of each region. For instance, freight needs in the LA Basin are going to be quite different than the freight needs in Northern California. We also want to tell a story from a statewide perspective as well. We want to ensure that we're including a freight investment strategy that speaks to statewide needs. We want to also ensure that we're highlighting projects and strategies that align with state priorities. I also want to point out that if there's alignment between regional priorities and state priorities, they're going to be partnership opportunities that we can take advantage of. And we certainly don't want to lose sight of that. So in terms of the schedule, we're planning on giving a presentation to the California Freight Advisory Committee, where we'll be discussing the statewide investment strategy as well as the findings from the regional narratives. And shortly afterwards, we'll release the draft California Freight Mobility Plan document for public review. Once that review is complete and we incorporate all the feedback received, We'll be planning to finalize that document by the end of the year. Before wrapping up the presentation, one of the things that I want to emphasize is as the chief of the Transportation Planning Program, as we're developing our planning products, we want to ensure that we are developing products that help inform decision-making in various investments. And so with that said, we're starting to think about the next steps in terms of the freight mobility plan. So how does this fit into the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan? And this is the plan that basically provides the framework in terms of how we're going to be prioritizing the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program. So we envision using content from the Freight Mobility Plan that will provide critical interregional goods movement information, as well as strategic investments that will benefit freight. Want to touch a little bit on the ITSP as well. We are going to be kicking off a series of public outreach sessions in the months of September and October. We're going to be having 6 to 7 workshops. So far we have workshops identified in San Diego, Salinas, Sacramento, Redding, Los Angeles, Oakland, and the Fresno area in the Central Valley. And we're certainly going to be welcoming input from those communities and stakeholders. And then we'll plan on wrapping up that plan in March 2021. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Questions? Yes, Commissioner Van Kennelenburg.
Did you put any value determination on imported freight versus exported freight? The notion that freight that's exported from a community brings wealth into the community versus freight that's imported into the community, and how there's a value determination between that?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Also, I'll certainly work with my staff to look up that information in a report and report back to you on that.
Okay, thanks.
I think along those same lines, under the sustainable freight strategies, we had 3 legs of that stool. And the leg that talked about increasing our competitiveness is just barely starting to move right now. So I think it's going to be difficult for you to assume they've done their work when they haven't done it yet. So I think that's a challenge for us, because if we put in all the other 2 legs, we don't really have a stool. So I think, however, collectively, but the big question I have is timing on this. When we had earlier discussions on this, it seems to me like we had an earlier deadline when we needed to have this draft so that it could be through all the approval processes and still get to the legislature. I believe Federal Highways needs 30 days to review. So are we going to miss that deadline, or how's this going to work?
Well, statutorily, we need to complete the plan by the end of the calendar year. We did get confirmation from FHWA that they won't be reviewing this plan and approving it. So essentially, we're moving forward to meet the state requirement for the plan.
So does that have implications for us in our formula money? I thought in the FAST Act, we had to have a current FAST Act compliant plan.
Correct. So in 2018, we actually did do a revision to meet the FAST Act requirements. And so we do have a freight compliant plan.
So even though we're going to have a new plan, according to the feds, they'll work off of our old plan? I mean, that gets a little confusing to me.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my staff and we'll provide a comprehensive answer to address your question.
Okay, because I know in the CFAC meetings, there was a lot of discussion about that and concern that because we have our federal formula dollars and our TCEP programs and everything, we want to make sure that we don't hold anything up. So
yeah, and my understanding is this plan won't impact our ability, to access federal funds, because we do have a compliant plan. So
it sounds a little strange that we would have two official plans, and And so I think we just need to confirm that.
Correct.
So if you
I'll
can
be
get
more than
back
happy
to
to
us
do
and
that.
let us know, we appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other discussions on this? Okay, thank you very much
I
for the
appreciate the
update.
opportunity.
Okay, with that, I think we are going to need to call it a day. So if I could ask all of you to join me in standing, I would like to, or we would like to close this meeting in honor of our fallen CHP officers. So if you can all just stand. So on August 12th, in the line of duty, CHP officer Andre Moya was killed with a routine traffic stop. And unfortunately, our hearts break mourning that someone who has been serving us, he was a member of the Highway Patrol for just 3 years. He leaves a wife and his mom and dad, his stepfather, brothers and sisters. And so for all of Riverside County, for all of our CHP family, for all of us as residents and serving the state in some manner, could I ask for just a moment of silence as we close this meeting in his honor? Thank you. We are now adjourned.